Hey guys, my name is Mujahid, and this is the third episode of A Beginner's Guide to C++. In this video, we are going to talk about functions. Let's get to it. First things first, the reason we use functions is we want to organize our code as much as possible, and it is usually not a good idea to type so many things in the main function. So, since you can declare a function outside of the main function, it makes it so it is less complicated inside of the main function, which what the application will do. So it makes it overall easier to read, therefore increasing the readability. It is also good for optimization because when you're working with a function, you can use that function over and over again. And instead of typing the same things again and again inside of the main function, you can just call the function and it will do what it does. So you don't have to repeat yourself over and over again. I already said this before, but you can declare functions out of the main function. And the way you do that is you go void and then you find a name for your function. And if it will take parameters, you type the type of your parameter. If it will use more than one parameter, you can go ahead and type as many parameters as you want in this format. And then in between these beautiful parentheses, you write your code. And every time the function is called, it is gonna do whatever code in here says. Let's go over this again with an example. I'm back at Visual Studio Code and let's go for something really simple. Let's write a function which just gives the output hello. To do that, I go outside of the main function because once again, you can declare the function inside of here, but it is better to not write so many things inside of main function to increase the readability. I go outside of the main function, I go void, name my function. Since the function will just say hello, let's name the function, say hello. A function like this wouldn't need any parameters, so we're just gonna leave that spot empty. If you leave the spot which is booked for parameters empty, function just doesn't take any parameters, but you need these parentheses to let compiler know that this is in fact a function. And inside of the beautiful parentheses, I'm just gonna go with something like this. So if I go inside of the main function and call the function I've declared outside of it, like this, and run the code, as you could see, the function was executed perfectly. Or I can just go back inside of main function and copy this and paste it over and over again. If I run the code with something like this, as you could see, the function was executed 5 times this time. And instead of typing this 5 times inside of the main function, all I had to do was type the name of the function and call it. This is a really small example, but if you're working with a bigger project, this matters a lot more. Let's also write a code that takes parameters. Name it something like getSum. And in here, first we will type the parameter once is type. I'm just gonna go with integer x. It's not really important what you name them. And let's also take another integer, which is integer y. Now I can go in between those beautiful parentheses and declare another variable. Let's name it something like sum and make it so it equals x plus y. And we want the function to give the sum of those two integers. So I can go for something like this. Now that we've declared the function, let's call it inside of the main function. I type the name of the function, and inside of here I give the values of the parameters x and y. For example, let's go with something like 15 and 25. Now if I run the code like this, it's gonna give us something like sum of the numbers is 40. I can go for something else, something like 100 and 200. And if I run the code, it is gonna give us 300, just like that. Now, the way functions work in C++ are kind of like variables. They can actually return and store values. And to do that, you need to type the type of value you want your function to return. You name your function. If it takes parameters, you name the parameters, you write your code inside of it. And in here we have something new, return value. What this will do is it will make it so the function has a value and the value is named value. Let's go over this with an example. This is the previous code I've written, and there is another way of actually doing this. We need to first get rid of the void. I will talk about what it does later. I go with something like integer because I want this function to store a value that is the type integer. I'm just going to get rid of this, and for the function to return the value of sum, I just go like this. Now, if I go inside the main function and write a code like this function was used as a variable and type something like this, which is the same way you use variables and run the code, as you could see, we see the result. This function was used as a variable and is 41. Now, what the function did inside is it did get the sum of 20 and 21 and assigned the value of them to a variable that is named sum, and it did return the value sum. This function right here is basically a variable if it is used like this. And in here, I haven't actually mentioned what void does or what does it mean, but what it does is it makes it so the function doesn't return anything. For example, if I went with something like integer function something something and I returned a value, it would return a value. But if I go with something like void function, won't return anything. Last but not least, let's talk about naming functions. The same rules as naming variables apply. For example, you can't start the name of your function with a number. You can only start it with a letter, or you can only start it with a letter or underscore, and you can't use special characters. The way it is recommended to name your functions is to name them based on what they actually do. For example, a function named giveValue would give you a value once you call it, or a function named sayHello would say hello, or a function named findSquare would give you the square of a number. That's basically how functions work. Alright guys, here's the question of the video. The left side is the code and the right side is what the console gave us. And as you could see, 5.5 doesn't equal 5. There is an inconsistency. What is the reason of that? The answer will be in the description, and that's about it. Take care.